advertisement industry. So they will always use the women as a tool for the male attraction, and they have made them into a sex object rather than the dignity and respect that they deserve. The dignity and respect is not in revealing yourself, but in covering yourself and hiding yourself, because you're not, you're precious. I do not wish to use these. Regarded as precious, and a pearl is always in a shell, so therefore they should be not revealing, and they should cover themselves. That's what the message. But how much? Yes, there are conditions with which a person can see, and in that scarf they have the permission to do everything, and with that dress code they are allowed to go into education in a time when women were not taught how to read and write because they may misuse it. He said, learning, seeking knowledge, and learning is an obligation for both men and women. طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ وَمُسْلِمَةٍ. He used the term both men, for both Muslim men and Muslim women. It is an obligation for them to learn. So seeking knowledge and learning, going into research and education, there is an obligation upon both men and women. And he taught his daughter to be one of the highest ranking people in his time, that she was so educated that there were men who would come and learn. Obviously she would not allow every person to come, but anyone who was very highly educated, she would help them go further in their research. People who were very well versed, people like Abu Dhar, for example, or people like Salman and people like Jabir, who have traditions from the Holy Prophet, who have narrated many traditions, and they have narrated many traditions from her, and they have asked her many of the sciences that she would address on all different issues, on the commentary of the Holy Quran, on the traditions, on history, on philosophy, on theology, on all the different issues that you can think of. And later on, even her daughter, when she migrated from Medina to Kufa, to Iraq, she was also a teacher who taught all the different sciences. So learning and teaching, and becoming an expert in science. And her mother was also a businesswoman, and she herself, the daughter of the Holy Prophet, had means of financing many of the projects for orphans. So you can see that she herself had a garden of date trees. From the revenue of that, she would help the orphans and many of the poor people of Medina. And she was a daughter of a mastermind woman who was the richest woman in that time. She was named Malikatul Arab, the Queen of Arabia, because of the wealth that she had. So she had the genes, and she had the education from both her parents. So Islam had encouraged. Now, Islam says that you go forward, but with your respect and dignity. Anyway, your dignity and respect, or your honor is under question mark, then you have to step back and think that I must revise and must not lose my respect and dignity that God has given me. There are other aspects that people also question. For example, the inheritance is half of a daughter is half of that of a man, of a brother, for example, in the Holy Quran. Now, the men have to provide for not only their families but also for the society, while the women, whatever they inherit, is theirs. A husband has to provide for wife and children, but a wife does not have to provide for her husband. Even for the society, there are general rules. Yes, if there are women who earn, then they do have to pay a charity. You know, the poor rate they all have, the small percentage of whatever you save, you will have to pay a tax on it, a religious tax, for the orphans and for the poor people. That all have to do. But the obligations that men have, the women do not have. Therefore, Islam had made it half, that she does not have to provide for the rest of the family members, but the husband must provide, or the man must provide, or the son must provide for his parents, if need be his in-laws, and also he must provide for his wife and children. So these were the responsibilities that were given to a man. Now, there are exceptions. Exceptions are everywhere, but even within exceptions there are exceptions. When the Holy Prophet had made those general rules, he did say there are exceptions in Islam. For example, if a man only had a daughter, then everything will go to her, and if the there are female members and everything goes to them. Obviously these are exceptions. But if there were male members, then whatever you divide, the male members will get twice the share of the female members, or the female members will get half the share of a man. And that's how the inheritance worked for fathers. The other thing was that the daughters had to be given a dowry, and that's where the major contribution of a father had been made. While the son does not have a high dowry, there is no preparation. Well, these days there is a lot of preparation, but in early days they had to provide for their wives, and they did not have to pay, while the fathers had to contribute towards their daughters. Now, in the Islamic world today, there are Muslims who would interpret certain rules according to their own understanding, which are but they are surely not Islamic. I do not wish to name any countries and then go into criticizing, then it becomes too critical. I do not wish to be criticized for being politically critical. Now, however, there are Muslim countries who have deprived the women of their rights, and there are Muslim countries who do not follow Islamic rulings. They are Muslim countries, they are not Islamic countries. An Islamic country would be a country that runs completely on Islamic rules, and a Muslim country would be generally ruled by a Muslim. So there are more Muslim states than Islamic states. So you will find that problem going across the whole of the Muslim world, 56 or 57 countries, and most of them do not completely follow the Islamic code of practice. So there may be, there may be a country that does not allow women to drive, but all the other countries do allow. That is not an Islamic ruling, that is not an Islamic law, that the women are not allowed. They can work, but obviously with their own conditions. So therefore, there are many of those things which are cultural in every society. Our cultures overtake our general practices, Islamic practices, and therefore we become servants of, as Ali ibn Abi Talib al-Islam has put it, he says, we are servants of, most of the people living in this world, they become servants of this world. Very few people become servants of God. So there are very few people who are servants of God. Most people are servants of their own desires and of this world. They serve the world rather than serving their God. And hence, the cultures take over the religion. And that would be the case with many of the Muslim worlds again, where the rights of women are not given. Now, obviously the points that you will see in Islam, that Islam, probably you see that Islam does not provide for, then I would like to answer those questions, because obviously I see Islam from a different perspective and you see Islam from a different perspective. There are two angles always in looking at different things. My perspective will be different than yours, because I'm a born Muslim who has probably gone into Islam, and I don't see some of the points that you do see. And I cannot see sometimes because my upbringing is different to that of yours. So I would rather listen to some of the questions and criticisms that you may have, and then look into giving an answer if I can, otherwise finding an answer for you. So I would let you ask questions, but 10 minutes I'll take more, and then I'll let all the people that are present here to give any criticisms or any questions. One of the other aspects that may arise, but it is not only for women, but it is for both men and women on the professions they may choose for themselves. Islam has an outline what things are permissible and what things are not permissible, and that applies to both men and women. So it not be critical to women, but there are certain jobs that men can do and women cannot do, and there are certain things that women can do in Islam and men cannot do. So there are specified areas where they can both work, and that would be important. If there were no men who were capable to perform, then the women would be allowed only as a secondary option. And likewise, if there were no women fit for a profession, then Islam would allow